All right, let's dive into something pretty fascinating. We're going to explore the idea that the Quran, this 1400-year-old sacred text, might actually have a complex, verifiable mathematical structure, kind of like a numerical symphony that's been hiding in plain sight all this time. Now, I know, it's a pretty bold claim, and it immediately makes you wonder, right? Could there really be some kind of deliberate mathematical order woven into the very fabric of this text? Is it just a book of verses, or is there this whole other layer of complexity that we're only just now, starting to get the tools to see? Okay, so let's just start with one number, 114. Right now, it's just a number on a screen. But what if it's more than that? In the context of the Quran, what could this number possibly mean? Well, as it turns out, 114 is the total number of chapters, or surahs, in the Quran. And, mathematically, it just so happens to be 6 multiplied by 19. Now, I get it. On its own, that might not seem like a big deal. But for the people studying this stuff, this is where it starts to get interesting. So, what are we looking at here? Is this just a random coincidence? A bit of number trivia? Or could it be the very first thread of a much, much bigger and more complex pattern? And that question right there is really what this is all about. Okay, so that brings us to this idea, a symphony in numbers. What does that even mean? Let's get a clear definition of what we're talking about here. So a numerical symphony isn't just about one or two random number facts. Think of it more like a massive interconnected network of patterns. The idea is that these patterns are consistent, they're all linked together, and you can find them everywhere, from the level of single letters all the way up to how the chapters themselves are arranged. And this is where it gets really wild. The scope of what researchers are looking at is huge. We're not just talking about one number. They're digging into everything: how often certain letters and words appear, the counts of chapters and verses, and even these super complex symmetrical structures, like ring composition. That's where a chapter's ideas at the beginning are mirrored at the end, kind of creating this perfect literary circle. It's all about finding connections across all these different layers at the same time. Okay, let's be real. Anytime you start mixing numbers and sacred texts, you've got to be a little skeptical, right? It's totally fair. So let's just tackle the elephant in the room head on. How do we separate actual science from, superstition? I mean, that's the big question, isn't it? How do we know this is a serious, rigorous study and not just some kind of mystical numerology? Well, the people doing this research are actually very, very clear about where they draw the line. And this really breaks it down for us. The approach uses number or adad as a simple tool, just for counting, nothing more. The goal is ilm, which means science, knowledge that's systematic and testable. What gets thrown out completely? Numerology. The whole mystical belief in lucky numbers or trying to predict the future, that's not what this is about. And to make sure they stick to that, the researchers follow some really strict rules. The methods have to be totally transparent. You have to report all your findings, even the ones that don't fit your hypotheses. And you absolutely cannot cherry-pick data to make a pattern look good. Most importantly, you don't assign any magical or metaphysical power to the numbers. It's purely about observation. I think this quote really sums up the whole mindset here. It says, "We are observing a pattern as a sign of greatness, not searching for lucky numbers." So the idea is to appreciate the text's incredible complexity, not to go on some treasure hunt for secret codes. The awe is supposed to be in the structure itself. All right, so if we're calling this a science, then it needs to have rules, right? So let's get into the nitty-gritty of the method these researchers actually use, how they make it rigorous and verifiable. So the core principle here is the same one you'd find in any scientific field. For a discovery to mean anything, your method has to be totally transparent. Anyone, and I mean anyone, should be able to take your process, repeat it, and get the same results. No secret formulas, no black boxes allowed. Okay, so here's what that looks like in practice. Step 1, you have to start with a standard, verified version of the text that everyone agrees on. Step 2, you set crystal clear rules for counting. Like, what exactly counts as a letter? What counts as a word? You have to define that stuff. Step 3, you use statistics to see if the patterns you're finding are actually significant or if they could just be random chance. And the final, crucial step, you share everything. All your data, your code, your methods, you put it out there for everyone to check. And it's really important to realize this isn't some brand new thing. People have been interested in the Quran structure for centuries. The real difference is the tools we have now. It started with classical scholars noticing literary patterns. Then came algebra, giving them new ways to think. Then in the 1970s, computers came along and changed the game for frequency analysis. And now, today, we have open source data and tools where literally anyone can jump in and help verify the findings.
So, we've talked about the what and the how, but that leaves us with the biggest question of all, the why. I mean, why does any of this research actually matter?
And just to be super clear one more time, the goal here is not to find secret codes or predict the future. The researchers in this field would say the why is something much deeper, and actually really relevant for our modern data-obsessed world. Really, there are 4 big reasons. First, it's about building a bridge between the worlds of science and technology and the world of religious texts. Second, it's meant to inspire a kind of awe, or ta'zim, for just how complex the text is. Third, it's about creating an open, honest research framework that other people can use and build on. And finally, and this might be the biggest one, it's about connecting with a modern, data-driven generation in a language they get. So who is this for exactly? Well, this whole field of studies sits at a really interesting crossroads. It's for STEM students who are looking to apply their skills in a totally new way. It's for religious scholars who are curious about new analytical tools. And honestly, it's for anyone out there who's just intellectually curious and loves digging into the deep structures of important historical texts. And that brings us full circle, right back to a big question. Look, whether you see all these patterns as a massive coincidence or as evidence of something more, something designed, this research forces us to think. If a 1,400-year-old text can contain this level of verifiable mathematical structure, well, it just makes you wonder what else is waiting to be discovered. Not just in the Quran, but in other foundational texts too. It's a pretty amazing thought to end on.